What if there was a system, thousands of years old, that could tell you which years carry the most risk? Not a guess, not a theory, a pattern, observed across 9 centuries. And according to that system, 2026 is unlike anything we have seen in 180 years. Here is why. In Chinese metaphysics, every year carries a specific energy signature. Think of it the way you might think about weather systems. 1 storm? Manageable. 2 at the same time? That gets your attention. 2026 has 3. The first fire comes from the calendar itself. The year is classified as Bing, Yang fire. This is the heavenly fire, intense, blazing, unavoidable. The second fire comes from the animal. 2026 is the year of the horse, and the horse itself carries fire energy. This is the earthly fire. And the third? We entered what is called Period 9 in 2024, a 20-year macro cycle dominated by fire, running all the way to 2043. This is the background fire, the fire that is already burning before the other 2 even arrive. A normal year has 1 fire source. 2026 has 3, and they have not aligned like this since 1846. Now here is the thing, 2026 does not stand alone. It sits at the center of what Chinese metaphysical scholars call the 3 years of great upheaval. A 3-year window running from 2025 through 2027. 2025, the snake year, is the build-up. Pressure accumulates quietly. Warning signs appear, but they are easy to dismiss. 2026, the fire horse, is the peak, the breaking point, where all that accumulated pressure finds its release. And 2027, the goat year, is the aftermath. The dust settles, rebuilding begins. If this framework has even a grain of truth, and the historical record suggests it might, the window for preparation is closing. So, does the pattern actually hold up? Let us look at the data. The fire horse cycle repeats every 60 years, and every time it comes around, a recognizable pattern emerges. 1126, the fall of the Northern Song dynasty. The wealthiest economy on earth at that time collapsed from within. 1846, the European Great Famine, cholera pandemic. The pressure that triggered revolutions across the entire continent 2 years later. 1906, the San Francisco earthquake, 7.9 magnitude, plus the global aftershocks of the Russo-Japanese War. 1966, the Cultural Revolution begins in China. Political upheaval sweeps across Southeast Asia. And now, 2026. The pattern is not prophecy, it is observation. 900 years of documented disruption, cycling every 60 years with a consistent signature. Established orders collapse, and new ones emerge through turbulence. You do not have to believe in Chinese metaphysics to recognize a rhythm that has repeated for nearly a millennium. So how does this fire energy actually show up in the real world? According to this framework, it manifests across 3 domains, simultaneously. The first is literal fire. Nature turns up the heat. Extreme heat waves, record-breaking droughts, wildfire seasons that defy containment, volcanic activity increasing in frequency. The planet's thermostat pushed to its limits. The second is what you might call anger fire, social unrest, political polarization reaching new extremes. protests escalating into conflicts, wars that resist resolution, the collective temperature rising. And the third is illuminating fire. Technology, especially AI, exposing hidden truths and disrupting existing power structures. Innovation born from pressure, but also instability from the speed of change. Now, here is the thing. You have probably already noticed all three of these trends accelerating. This framework simply gives the convergence a name. Every year, the Chinese-speaking internet holds a massive vote, choosing a single character to define the year ahead. Over 100,000 people participated this time. The winner for 2026? Burn. The Chinese character is Fen, and its structure tells you everything you need to know. The top half of the character means forest, wood, resources, the old order. The bottom half means fire, ignition, transformation, the new force. Put them together and the meaning is clear. Wood feeds fire. The old fuels the new. What cannot adapt becomes fuel. Think about that for a moment. Over 100,000 people, many of whom study these traditions seriously, collectively agreed that burning transformation is the defining theme of this year. This is not an academic exercise. It is a cultural sentiment reading on a massive scale. Now, there is an even older layer to this analysis. The I-Ching is essentially China's oldest decision-making framework. Think of it as a 3,000-year-old strategic playbook, used by emperors, generals, and business leaders across centuries. The hexagram assigned to 2026 is called Heaven-Fire Union, and its message is blunt. Unity brings success. Division brings conflict. And the middle ground? It disappears. 3 practical consequences follow from this. First, alliance restructuring. Nations, companies, and individuals will be pushed to choose sides. Neutrality becomes a luxury no one can afford. Second, resource competition. Collaboration builds resilience. Hoarding creates isolation and conflict. And third, polarization accelerates. Capital takes sides. Technology becomes political. Sitting on the fence becomes the riskiest position of all. Whether you view this as ancient strategic wisdom or simply a useful thinking framework, the trend toward forced polarization is already visible everywhere. So, when should you pay the closest attention? In a typical year, 2 or 3 months carry heightened energy in this system. In 2026, at least 6 out of 12 do. Volatility is not the exception this year, it is the default setting. But 2 months stand out above the rest. June 2026. Fire energy reaches its absolute maximum. If extreme heat events, market swings, or geopolitical flashpoints spike this month, this framework will have called it months in advance. And December 2026. Water energy collides head-on with the dominant fire. Think of it as throwing cold water on a scorching hot pan. The reaction is violent and unpredictable. Mark these 2 months. If nothing happens, you have lost nothing. If the pattern holds, you will have been prepared. So, what do you actually do with all of this? Whether or not you fully subscribe to this framework, the practical advice that comes out of it is sound for any period of elevated uncertainty. 2 layers. On the financial side, liquidity is king. Hold cash. Not because the sky is falling, but because cash gives you options when everyone else is scrambling. Avoid leverage. Do not borrow to invest when the risk environment is this elevated. Do not chase market highs. and pay attention to the specific economic and geopolitical risks of your region. Not all areas will be affected equally. On the personal side, think of it as building an inner citadel. Subtract, do not add. Simplify your commitments. Reduce complexity and exposure. Diversify your skills. Do not depend on a single income source or a single industry. Update your mental models. What worked in the past may not apply in unprecedented conditions. And above all, cultivate inner stability. When the external world is volatile, your greatest asset is a calm and clear mind. External chaos requires internal stability. Now, before you walk away thinking this is all doom and gloom, there is another side to this story, and it might be the most important part. In Chinese philosophy, destruction and creation are not opposites. They are two halves of the same process. Fire illuminates. What was hidden comes to light. Corruption exposed. Truth surfaced. Fire purifies. What no longer serves gets cleared away, making room for what comes next. And fire drives innovation. The greatest breakthroughs in human history came from periods of maximum pressure. Necessity remains the mother of invention. Here is what the historical record actually shows. After every fire horse upheaval, every single one, what followed was not continued decline, it was renewal. New systems that worked better, technological leaps, social progress, stronger communities built by people who chose to adapt rather than freeze. The world may be in chaos, but we do not have to be. This overview is part 1 of a 5-part series. In the episodes ahead, we will go deeper into natural disaster predictions, geopolitical shifts, economic risks, and what this framework says about the future of human evolution. Links are in the description. Whether you see this as ancient wisdom, a fascinating cultural lens, or simply a useful framework for thinking about uncertain times, the choice to prepare is always yours. Stay grounded.